Izuku was very nervous about this next child. And it wasn't because she had a dangerous quirk. They all had dangerous quirks. And this one wasn't even uncontrollable. To give more details, this child was named AKA. And her quirk was called Assimilation. Assimilation was a mutant-type quirk that turned AKA's entire body into a kind of metallic clay-like substance. Her body could change shape to a minor degree, not full-on shapeshifting like Sansan. She could also regenerate if her body had enough nutrients. But the main ability of assimilation was its ability to allow AKA to take over another person's body and mind. All she had to do was insert any part of her body into a person's bloodstream, through a cut of some kind. It could be a small piece of herself that she could rip off, or her entire body if the cut was big enough. Then this would allow AKA to take over that person's body and mind, giving her full access to their abilities, and depending on how big of a piece of her in that person, she can even access their quirk factor, and start to mutate it, causing changes in a person's body and quirk. She could take over as many people as she wanted, adding them to a sort of hive mind. It was a very dangerous quirk, but one that was also controllable. Normally, she'd just be under government watch, without them feeling the need to take her away into the DOC program, unless she proved to be dangerous. Which she did. Because her mindset was almost as dangerous as her quirk. AKA had lived in a small town near the mountains, that had been utterly destroyed by villains, leaving very survivors. None of which were AKA's parents, leaving the poor girl alone, and devastated. And this had a terrible scar on her mind. This was seen when she was taken to an orphanage, which was unfortunately run by a less than suitable director, who was rather abusive towards the children. Thanks to the villain attack, AKA now had an unyielding hatred towards villains and anyone who acted like a villain. And so, while most people would despise a man who abused children, AKA's hatred was on another level, shown by when she convinced some of the other children to cut the director with a knife, allowing her to use her quirk to take over his body. She then proceeded to torture him for several days, forcing him to harm himself before giving control of the body back to him temporarily, so he could feel the pain. This torture lasted for a week, before AKA decided it was enough, forced him to gather up evidence of wrongdoing, and made him turn himself in. Naturally, the authorities realized something wasn't quite right, and quickly discovered that AKA was controlling him, and after extracting the piece of her from his body, he immediately told her what AKA had done. Once that was revealed, AKA was deemed too dangerous to be part of normal society at the moment and thus was taken into DOC's care. When confronted about her actions, AKA insisted she was in the right, saying that the only reason she didn't torture him for longer was that she was concerned he would die. So at the very least, she drew a line at that point. Although she stated that she didn't particularly care if the man lived or died, rather she didn't want to be labeled as a killer. It was clear the incident had traumatized her quite severely, and it was going to be hard to convince her that perhaps villains didn't need to be tortured, or treated like they weren't human. Especially since that mindset wasn't necessarily popular. Izuku sighed as he looked down at one of the other documents he had to sign. It was a related document to accept a shipment of what was called Vegeta formula, Vegeta being short for vegetables. This formula had one purpose, releasing a person from AKA's control. Because normally, trying to release someone from AKA's control would be almost impossible in a fight. The only way to do so, other than this formula, would be to remove or destroy the piece of AKA that was in their body. However, a way around that was by exploiting AKA's main weakness: vegetables. She was deadly allergic to vegetables, to the point where eating them could actually be fatal to her. As such, if a person under AKA's control were to consume a vegetable, it could kill the piece of AKA that was inside them, thus freeing them of AKA's control. This formula was made to streamline the process. Just throw a bomb filled with this formula at someone AKA was controlling, it'll explode into a gas, and once they breathe it in, that person will quickly be freed of AKA's control. Of course, this gas was very dangerous to AKA and would need to be kept away from her main body. The only reason Izuku felt comfortable accepting this gas was because of the potential danger AKA possessed by living here. Izuku didn't like looking at children as potential villains, but he couldn't turn a blind eye to the possibility of AKA taking control of the other children here, and that would be disastrous. I hope I never have to use this. Izuku shook his head as he signed the paper. Hopefully, everything just works out until I can get them into therapy. XXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXXX. Izuku waited outside of the house, with Ochako beside him. I'm sure she'll be fine. She hates villains and there are no villains here. Ochako reassured him. Not yet. Rembernies. Izuku pointed out. Ochako's eyes widened. Oh god, I forgot about her. Oh, that's gonna, I am sure you'll figure something out. I hope so, Izuku said, as he saw a car drive through the entrance gates, and up to the house. The car stopped, and the back door opened. At long last. I am free. He heard a young feminine voice say. For some reason, the voice sounded like something you'd hear come out of a villain on an old dubbed anime, or like a Power Rangers villain. And then he saw her. Despite being 9 years old, the girl was about as short as Kyoku. Her entire body was metallic silver, looking like a mixture of liquid metal and clay. Her eyes were pure blue, with no pupils or anything, just blue. She wore a mostly yellow and blue dress, with some red stripes thrown in, as well as a hairband with similar colors, wrapped around the top of her head, which was shaped into a weird tail/ponytail thing that drooped down from her head to her back. Yes, excellent, aka said as she exited the car, with a sinister grin on her face. From here, I'll become the most powerful hero in history. Ahahahaha. Never in their lives did either Izuku or Ochako think that they'd hear someone proclaim they wanted to be a hero, in a cartoonish villain monologue. This place just gets weird and weirder, huh? Ochako thought to herself. Well, I hope we can provide everything you'll need to achieve that goal, Izuku said as he walked over to the small girl, and gave her a friendly smile. AKA looked up at him with an inquisitive glare, putting her finger under her chin as she sized him up. So you are the caretaker of this facility? Yes. You're younger than I expected. Well, no matter. I'm sure you heard about the last caretaker that dared to commit evil acts in front of me. Izuku nodded. Yes, I did. And I'm glad you brought him to justice. I'm not particularly happy about the torture, but after all you've been through, I don't feel the need to hold that against you. So let's put that behind us. AKA kept looking at Izuku for any sign of evil, but after not finding any she moved on. Very good. Well then show me around my new fortress. She and Kiba are either going to get along wonderfully, or horribly. I'm scared of what'll happen if it's the latter. Izuku thought to himself, as he took AKA inside. XXXXXXXXXXXXX. Well first, let me show you your room, Izuku said, as he opened the door, and showed her room. AKA looked over the room. It had been prepared for her the day before. The bed was made, a computer and TV had been set up, and the room was dusted and cleaned. She jumped onto the bed and looked around a little more. Yes, this place is fine for the time being. Obviously, once I become a hero I'll purchase myself a whole mansion, but for now, this will do. I'm glad you think so. Izuku told her gently. Speaking of becoming a hero, from your files, I've read you've had some trouble training, because your body doesn't exactly gain muscle or grow very much, and you can't exactly test your quirk on people. AKA scowled. True. The price for having an amazing quirk is that it's rather hard to train with. Well, in response to this, I have thought of several ways for you to train, Izuku said, pulling out a piece of paper and showing it to her. For one, you could practice some gymnastics and martial arts. This will help you when you don't have anyone under your control to fight for you. Speaking of which, I've also had the idea of giving you some bladed weapon training, since you have to actually make a cut into your opponent in order to take them over. AKA put on a thoughtful pout, as she considered Izuku's words. Part of me dislikes having to do things myself, but I will do what I must to make sure villains are punished. Good. One of the most important parts of being a hero is to understand what you can and can't do, especially on your own. Izuku warned her. This place is home to children with powerful quirks like yourself. There are even a few who want to be heroes, and they would easily be able to make a cut in an opponent. Wonderful, they sound like good allies. He. Once again the girl let out an evil laugh. Together with the power of friendship, we will crush the villains in mind, body, and spirit. Ahahahaha. I've never heard anyone talk about the power of friendship so sinisterly. Izuku thought to himself. Speaking of those kids, I do need you to remind you that while they are powerful, they are also dangerous, which is why they're here. Don't do anything that may cause them to freak out or panic, or it could end in complete disaster, for you and everyone else. I know that, AKA stated confidently as she crossed her arms over her chest and closed her eyes cockily. Trust me, I am very smart. I'm sure nothing bad'll happen because of me. I hope so. Also, just to let you know, there is a very tall boy about 6 feet to be exact, looks like he's covered in moss, don't touch him or you may burst into flames. Izuku warned her. AKA's eyes opened quickly, after hearing what Izuku just said. Oh, and there's another girl here who constantly reads the minds of the people around her, she can't stop, so please don't get upset about her. Izuku continued. AKA repeated, her eyes getting wider. One more thing, there is a girl you may see, she has lavender hair, and wears a hoodie, she gets scared very easily, and if she gets too frightened she'll let off a gas that makes you experience a living nightmare that's so awful it's put people in states to where they'll need to have therapy for the rest of their lives. AKA repeated once again, this time much louder as her eyes achieved max wideness. But don't worry, she's gotten a lot better control of it since she first got here. Izuku tried to reassure her before something else came to mind. Sorry, one more thing I promise. You're going to see monsters around here that look like they're made of darkness. That's normal, they're made via the quirk of another child here. Don't worry, they won't hurt you. Oh, okay. AKA was stunned by all this, so Izuku decided to let her learn everything else at her own pace. Well, that's most of the important information. There's a list of rules on a board on this floor. If you need anything, feel free to ask me, or one of the temporary workers here. They're only going to be here for a short time, but while they're here you're free to ask them to help, within reason of course. I will do that. AKA responded, still a little shocked. Right, well, I'll let you get comfortable here, Uraraka should have your bags up soon, so just wait a little bit. Izuku told her kindly, as he got ready to leave. Remember, if you need anything, or anything's wrong, just call me, and I'll take care of it. Izuku opened the door to leave and found Yonda standing on the other side, with a tray of cookies in her hands. Hello father. Yonda greeted him cheerily with a big smile on her face, before looking past him at AKA. And hello to you AKA. My name is Yonda, it's a pleasure to meet you. Why is there a voice in my head? AKA panicked for a moment, before remembering what Izuku had told her. Wait, the caretaker told me about a psychic girl. This must be her. Wait, is she reading my mind right now? Yes. I do apologize for the scare, but this the only way I can speak. Yonda told her as she came into the room. I am also deaf, so any attempts to speak to me in a normal way will unfortunately fail. Oh. Well, greetings. I am AKA. The future bane of all villains. AKA introduced herself after getting her bearings. For now, I'll be staying here until my rise to power. Don't worry, if anyone attempts any villainy here, they will regret what they've done, very much. Ahahahaha. Did she just do an evil laugh in her head? Yonda thought to herself while keeping up her friendly smile. I'm sure. Anyway, I've brought some cookies, free of vegetables or vegetable ingredients of course. Fuku made these. She's another one of the girls that live here. She's a lovely girl but very shy, she wanted to make you these to welcome you here, but she didn't have the courage to come and give you them herself, so I'm here instead. The moment Yonda said vegetable free, she sped over to her and greedily looked over the tray. Don't mind if I do. She then grabbed the whole tray and shoved it in her mouth, which extended to fit the massive object, and once it was halfway in, she let all the cookies fall into her mouth, before spitting the tray back out. Ahahahaha. Those were delicious. Did you even have time to taste those? Yonda asked her skeptically. I'm tasting them right now, AKA told her. Okay then. I'm just not going to try and understand how your body works. Yonda told her. Anyway, let's talk for a while. I'd love to get to know you better. Yonda, you're not planning anything, are you? Izuku asked her, giving her a questioning look. Of course not father. I just want to get to know our new friend and welcome her to our wonderful home. Yonda said innocently, in a very cheeky tone. Well, I don't really have any reason to suspect you'd do something wrong here. Please don't prove me wrong. Izuku told her, as he started to leave. Well, I'll let you two get acquainted, please behave. Both of you. Yes, father. Yonda said, waving Izuku goodbye as he exited the room before she turned her head to AKA. Now then, let's have a talk.